Well, good afternoon. Let me get the volume there. It has realigned itself. There we go. Well, good morning, everybody. It's still morning. It's 11:46 a.m. on Sunday, the 17th of May. And got time to do a podcast, so, why not? Lately, I have found myself more occupied with the microcosm than the macrocosm. And I mean, unless you want to hear about, everything that's going on in my life, I'm not sure it makes for very good podcasting, but I'll try my best. So, first, I think it's a blessing if you're living a life now where your primary focus is the microcosm. I think it's a kind of a blessing, if you will. It allows you to live life. It allows you to plan and to dream, and there's no guarantee your plans or your dreams are going to come to fruition. But planning and dreaming are things that human beings like to do. They give meaning to our life, and therefore they're important. Maybe one of the most important things, actually. Planning and dreaming, building, anything that just sort of follows the growth model, you know? And that's a difficult model to find right now, the growth model. What is growth? Well, it's a phenomenal word. I think it's like almost like a cornerstone word in the English language and in any language, really. I think it's one of the most extraordinary things ever documented. Growth means that you are in communion with life, meaning that you have a relationship with God. Because remember, on the Talamanca Review, God and life are synonyms. Never forget that. I got to explain my own lexicon here so I don't start to slip into some rabbinical babble. So I define all my nouns, especially the nouns. Like, what are you talking about, Bruce? Language is extremely important. Extremely important. And language has to go through transmutations as societies go through transmutations. All of the language has to be lifted and brought into the new comprehension structure, the new way that the society uses language. Language is constantly changing. It's an evolving spiritual association that the human race has or gets at an early form of consciousness development. So language and the complexity of language as it evolves, and language is both numerical and alpha, both letters and numbers. Math is a language, never forget that. It's a way of communicating. So the job of anyone working in language at this time in history is to literalize the mythological, to demystify it and to decrypt it from its ancient riddles and allegories and metaphors and various levels of obfuscation, and just bring it to light, internal or external light, and ask yourself, what is this thing just in and of itself? You know, the old Marcus Aurelius Stoicism. What is this? Right? That's true objectivity. And true objectivity is an incredibly um, important thing in the internal journey. And what you're trying to delimit when you're inside, and there's pictographic evidence of your ego, imagistic evidence of your ego as part of the architecture of your consciousness. You have to kind of like step over that stuff or get it out of the way or recognize it right away. That's part of the internal subjective. And you want internal objective, just like you want objective truth in hard sciences when you're mixing chemicals and you're doing formulae and you're banging things together at the speed of light underground in Switzerland, you know. So, anyways, I find myself more concerned with the microcosm these days. I find myself very involved in the life of my pueblo, my community. When you live rural, you get to know people. It's a kind of informal intimacy. You know, it's one of those beautiful contradictory words. You combine two words to create one word or one expression, and the contradiction of the two things makes a new word or a new understanding. That's pushing language forward. I always use the example of Yeats when he wrote about the Irish Revolution in Easter 1914 or 1917. I can never remember. And he said, a terrible beauty is born. A terrible beauty is born. So all of the language has to be modernized. It's a massive undertaking. And the cryptic language of ancient cultures and ancient wisdom has to be put through some kind of compiler that renders it as rational and objective data in the 21st century. I guess this is the biggest lesson of Pisces, which we're exiting now. This is probably the biggest lesson of this season of time. Time has seasons as well. I'd say every major astrological sign is a season of time. So finding the growth principle is incredibly difficult in the time we live. To find things that are growing, to find opportunity. Grow. What is again? What is growth? Well, if you come from a sunny and optimistic culture that hasn't really been put through the ringer for a few generations, you may see growth just in positive terms. So obviously there's growth all around me up here. I mean, you can't imagine the way a rainforest grows. I mean, I got to whitewash the back of the house here again because I've got a little bit of mold and the lime kills it, but it's so humid and it's so sunny and so wet here. It is like a rainforest is basically a greenhouse without any ceiling or walls. It's just nonstop growth here. It really is mind-boggling. You can't really comprehend it unless you live in it. And then you start to contemplate it and you start to imagine what the force on the other side would look like that would be animating this place. Now, it's fairly easy when you imagine the astral animation of a city. It's fairly easy. It's almost a one-to-one match, right? Because the city is a product of human imagination. It comes out of architecture, it comes out of all of our languages, and it's a construction of men. It's not a natural construction. And therefore, the internal life of a city is the internal life of man, which is a city. Sometimes the simplest things are the most powerful to just take a moment and realize what's been said. There's a lot more to a city than simply the cohabitation, the dense cohabitation of multitudes. Cities are where all of the bad ideas come from. I know that that sounds like a very general statement, something an idiot might say, but allow me to be idiotic. And the reason bad ideas come out of these environments is there's not enough connection with the primal energies of life and consciousness when you live in a city your whole life. And it's not just the city, it's the evolution of the city, because the city and the way we live, the geography and technology of the way we live, are the blueprints for the world that they're bringing in. It even pivots off of the city as a concept, the city as a structure, but now they're going to digitally fence it so you can't leave your 15-minute city. You're digitally fenced in. Digitally fenced in. You know, they can do that with animals now too. That you can buy software and collars for your cattle and your bulls and your cows. And you can open up a tablet like an iPad and you can literally with your finger draw the fence boundaries of where you want the cows to stay. And there's literally no physical fence there, but the geography will the space of the pasture defined electronically will be programmed into the collar. And when the cow gets too close to one of the imaginary non-existent fences, there will be an incentive for it to retreat. I'm not sure if they do it with pheromones, if they do it with a sound, if they do it with a slight shock. I don't know. But this is the state of technology of pasturing animals. You do not need fences anymore. It's the kind of thing you notice when you have a lot of land. Oh, fences are done now. We're going to geofencing. We're going to digital fencing now. Just an overlap between the micro and the macro in my worlds. So, here on the Talamanca Review, I prefer to look at the world through the lens of realpolitik, simultaneously understanding that it's a divine hologram. But the concept or the reality of the divine hologram is a realization that you come to in sequences as a kind of initiatic experience over a lifetime of whatever practice you do, or a period of time. It doesn't have to be a lifetime. And you just start to see that this is a malleable reality and it interacts with our consciousness. Doesn't mean you master it. I haven't mastered it, but I've done enough meditation to see it. And according to my birth religion, I'm not allowed to bear false witness. So I can't bear false witness. So this is a divine hologram. There's no doubt about it. But trying to figure out how to game or hack the divine hologram, that's a fool's game. That's a Luciferian endeavor right there. You know? And there's no benign interpretation of that. There's no double blind here. As all these whack job Gnostic pseudo secret societies want us to believe, There's a lot more negative around us than just a demiurge. Let me put it to you that way. Again, it's a profound limitation of what's going on and what we're really engaged in. We see these limitations everywhere. The Catholics wanting us to believe that there are only two forms of life between matter and spirit in what they call the Middle Kingdom, and those are either angels or demons. The level of spiritual myopia in that statement is mind-boggling. And it's hard to believe that anybody could say it with a straight face in 2026. It's just like an open declaration of ignorance and inexperience, spiritual inexperience. So, I find as I watch things progress that there's an almost carnival-like atmosphere to it. A carnival. You remember when the carnival would come to town, or an exhibition, sometimes they would call them, and they would set up the Ferris wheels and all the rides and everything. And we had it growing up. We had one in Ottawa. There was one in Toronto. The Toronto X was huge, huge. Increasingly dangerous, though, unfortunately. That's what it feels like, this trip to China. It's like a carnival, you know. I really want to believe that there's a wheeling and dealing going on in the world. I find myself listening to a very interesting fellow out there now. Probably a lot of you have seen him, but I would say that he's financially literate and geopolitically absolutely literate. His name is Simon Dixon. You might want to listen to him, a recent interview he's done, or just give him a listen because it's very interesting what he's talking about. And of course, he's affirming what I've been saying for some time now, is that there is, let's call the move toward globalization, whatever form that's going to take. I think it's going to be fintech global. I think it's going to be fintech global police, financial tech global police. I think they're all going to line up on this. Everybody's going to see the value of it. They're all the same people at the end of the day. They got more in common with each other than they have with us, the people that they govern in whatever country they're representing, whether it's China, Russia, the United States. These people are their own class of people now. And with the level of technology coming up the back door, the stuff that Whitney Webb spends so much time documenting, and she's done a brilliant job, the Palantir, PayPal Mafia, all of these people. There must be in power circles in the world now emerging a temptation that they haven't felt in centuries. Because the urge to control and dominate human beings and stop cooperating with them in some kind of consensus contract, whether it be pseudo democracy, parliamentary Republican politics, whatever you want to call it, it's just the pretense that they're tolerating us. That's all it is. It is the pretense that they are tolerating us. And that's all it is. And in certain periods of history, due to the inability to completely dominate through lack of technology, because this isn't our first kick at the can. The reason I think this way and I express myself this way is um, it's my belief, my understanding, but it's a non shareable understanding. I can't prove it to you, so I call it my belief. Um, And it's interesting as these little limitations in language come up. Like I can't say that this is true, but I believe. So I believe the human race has risen and fallen to epic heights like the heights we're at now. Maybe it's not always the same technology matrix every time. I think Atlantis, the last incarnation of Atlantis, was much more crystal based, is what I've heard. And I don't know anything about crystals, so I can't really talk about them. Um, I will, however, note that they were the foundation of the Kryptonian society as a technological species in the Superman comics. All of their technology were built off of crystals. It was that was an Atlantean reveal in the Superman story. Okay. Well, where does one read about these things? You read about these things in all kinds of different places, obscure books and um, literature associated with the seeker, we'll call it, the person eagerly seeking knowledge and wisdom. So we know from these risings and fallings that there have been really, really horrible misalignments between the elite and the governed. Well, we see them in the world today. We see them in what I consider to be the despicable caste system of India. The dots on the forehead, fucking ridiculous. You know, you see it, profound divisions in class and family and position, title, power in China. They have their version of the super rich there. Their China is so rich, they're going through their American Psycho phase. They're producing these psychotic type people, young men like Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, written by Bret Easton Ellis. Now, the book was written in the 90s. Okay, was it? I Let me just check about that because it was a shocking book when it came out. But what year did Bret Easton Ellis publish American Psycho? March 6th, 1991. Vintage books. Okay, so yeah, it's interesting that it's coming right at the end of the Cold War, right after the 80s. In the 80s under Reagan, that decade was looked at as extremely material, like the explosion in powers and privileges and the rewriting of monetary rules. Okay. Back in the 70s, being a banker wasn't a sexy job. Entrepreneurs made more money. You could make more money selling skidoos or lawnmowers than you could being a banker in the 60s. And then everything changed. And, banking is one of the more interesting worlds to study. And the reason banking is interesting is although it is deeply embedded in a state and it's embedded through legislation, the Bank Act, every country has one, the Bank Act of America, the Bank Act of Canada, the Bank Act of England, this charter, the central banks. The banks are entirely governed by laws. They are given the sacred duty to steward our economies. And I say steward because it's an untitled position, except for the governor or the chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve or the governor of the Commonwealth Bank. Those are appointed positions. But banking occupies this gray area between the public sector and the private sector. And we've never really noticed that before, like what a powerful layer of the governing system banking has become. And yet bankers are not elected. The chief executive officer of any major bank is the product of internal competition and the person who's going to make the rest of the shareholders the most amount of money. There's no election process there. So money just sits there now, and money is going through a massive transformation now. So I think as we go forward, there will be many points where there will be a kind of false optimism. So what do I mean by that? Well, I think at some point in the near future, after they're done grinding people to dust. And that's what they're doing. in Canada and Australia especially. They're just in New Zealand and Britain. They're grinding their people to dust. Every ounce of spirit and motivation and independence that the citizen in this country has is being excised as a kind of tax. And that's a harvest. You have to see that as a harvest. Okay, that in a sense is a spiritual harvest because you're harvesting the psychic energy of people, you're taking away their hope. And the excise taxes are coming that I spoke about. Everybody's talking about it now. I saw another video about it today. This one focused on Canada, not Australia. They're gonna bring in a capital gains tax on your property, and you're gonna they're gonna do it maybe annually, so you can take out another mortgage and spread the tax out over 10 years. These motherfuckers at the revenue agencies are going to remortgage your home for you, and they're going to underwrite the new mortgage and set an interest rate and let you pay the capital gains tax like a second mortgage for 10 years or 15 years. So they're going to second mortgage homes. So what this means is through the machinations of money, and money is ultimately, you know what money is? Money is like that movie that they're remaking now. The original one was Christophe Lambert and Sean Connery and Clancy Brown played the big Russian guy. And I'm talking about the movie Highlander here. There can be only one. Money is very much that there can be only one mentality. It's a battle royale to the very end for people who become possessed by Mammon. All of the natural instincts of hunting and gathering get transferred or transported into this completely artificial world of money and conquest, and people get addicted to it. They get addicted to it. Those people have to go. Now, one of the things I do on the Talamanca Review is I try to do these spontaneous essays, I guess you could call them, but I think about something, and in a sense, I just think about it out loud. And it just becomes a kind of poetic outline for something that you're trying to figure out, that you're trying to understand. And it would be nice if there was some kind of fanciful story to tell you. That would be wonderful. People are going to be raptured to a new earth. People have to align with the new earth. I mean, what does that even mean? I don't think it means anything that can be made sense of. The question becomes how quickly can new systems replace the old ones, and how trustworthy will the new systems be if the new systems are brought in? So basically, what's happening is that the world is being put into these three sections that I talked about, with other areas of the world aligned with one or a combination of the three principles, okay? And the three principles are going to be Asia, which will be led by Beijing. And that doesn't mean it'll be abusive. That doesn't mean that old hostilities will come out and, the Japanese will be punished. I think they'll genuinely get over all of their 20th century beefs, and there are many, and become cooperative and work together and form a powerful economic region. And we get America, and I'm in America, so I'm part of the American alignment, and you can see it everywhere now. We have a new president in the form of Laura Fernandez, who is perhaps, well, she's undoubtedly an extension of the old government under Chavez, whom I liked quite a bit, actually. And he came from the World Bank, where he had been working for a decade. I believe his wife is Slovenian, speaks five languages. He speaks five languages. He's like the best president they've had since I've been here. I really like Chavez. He started to get a lot tougher on crime. And before you start biting my head off, if you're of a liberal tendency, I mean, it's out of control, man. It's out of control. We just had two cops shot dead in front of a place I go once or twice a month in one of the towns. Okay, the exact store. And they were just executed. Two cops were executed. And so, unless that's happening in your neighborhood, you really don't have an opinion. I mean, I think it's unique to Central America and Latin America in general that the family structure, the strong family structure, provides for secondary economies. This is why cartel culture does so well down here, because it's a complete economy operating right beside the main economy of the country, whatever it might be in the case. Agriculture and tourism and various other things, technology now for Costa Rica. But alongside it is operating at the same time this very, very lucrative black market economy, which, I mean, ultimately, when you look at cocaine from the ground up, it's the revenge of the farmer. It's the farmer's ultimate revenge, right? It's what the farms think of the cities. It's like cocaine is the perfect illustration of the whole thing. So you got the farmers growing the coca leaves to sell to the people as a powder who live in the cities, who find living in the cities so unbearable that they have to self-medicate with this powder. It's the farmer's revenge. Nobody's ever seen cocaine that way. It's the ultimate fuck you from the agricultural class. You're gonna leave us out of the table? You're gonna make us work like slaves? Fuck you. We're gonna grow cocoa. Fuck you. There's a kind of Latin American poetic brilliance about it, a kind of Zorro zzz mentality about it, right? And that's how they regard this stuff down here, as a completely secondary economy. It has its own rules. In many ways, its rules are stricter than the rules of the society proper. I don't know how I stumbled on this. Yeah, we're going to the Americas. So we're going to be part of the Americas. And I think Big Daddy Trump, I think I swear to God, if I didn't know better, and I don't even want to be the one to say this out loud, but if I didn't know better, I'd say that that motherfucker was taking over the whole cocaine business. I think he wants to do the cocaine business, um, the way the in a manner so blatant and so overt, um, it'll make George Bush Sr. look like he colored inside the lines, right? And that's my feeling. I think that the U.S. is just. I think Trump is the ultimate pragmatist. Okay, and pragmatism is much better than idealism as a life metric, as a tool to measure what you're going to do in your life. Pragmatism is always better than idealism. I'll tell you right now. And it's occurred to the Donald that there are fucking trillions of dollars in cocaine. And old Donald, he's probably crossed his mind that, well, the only thing that's making this, preventing this from being legal revenue is the law. And you know what? I'm the law. And maybe I could write a law saying that, these class A scheduled drugs are now declassed, man. They're legal within reason. They can't be sold to minors. We fought this war long enough. Um, and we're just going to let this play out as legalized recreation and an expanding rehabilitation industry. It's an economy only the rich can afford, by the way. Until it gets really ugly, and then it's like East Hastings Street in Vancouver. And then it's just off the charts ugly. Then it's just Portland and the bad parts of Portland. Then it just goes off the rails. The thing I want to talk about as we wind up is this idea of growth, and how even when you have to accept the sort of Machiavellian truth of the world that there is obviously a force conspiring against specifically the first world, specifically what would be called the I don't know, the heirs of Rome, let's call it, as the rabbis might call it. We are the heirs of Rome, the Western world. Um, heirs of the Vatican, heirs of the Western tradition of the Greek and the Vatican. We are Rome. And there seems to be a concerted effort to destroy this culture, eradicate it, and suffocate it, and murder it. And I don't think that can be like avoided anymore. And that has to be coming from somewhere. And the question is then, where is it coming from? Who set up these immigration policies? Why is there an open attempt to completely wipe out a culture? That's what we're witnessing now. The attempted genocide of a culture, the Western culture. It may not seem that way, but everything that's going on now is setting us up to get closer and closer and closer to that outcome. There's no other outcome. And yet at the same time, the fruits of the Western culture are the bounty of the entire world now in terms of dispensation of technology as economy. That's all the byproduct of the United States, the entire technological economy, the economy of technology. I triple dog dare you to find me a good TV made in Russia or a good car or anything. Why don't the Russians make anything? You ever ask yourself that? Lack of creativity in a people is a sure sign something's missing, I'll tell you right now. What is the world we're going into? Who's leading us there? This force that's leading, how much respect does it have for you as a living being? Does it respect your right to exist? If I sounded like I'm in a slightly somber mood today, I will confess that as I reflect on the genocide of a culture, I'm mainly reflecting on some information I've taken in about my home country, Canada, and just how bad it is now. I mean, it's a culture on the verge of collapse. It's being sold, basically, being pieced off and sold, assets stripped and sold. Yeah, assets stripped and sold. It's kind of sad to see, actually. You know, I have a strong connection with Canada. You know, my family's been there for a couple hundred years, 250 years or so. It's amazing, you know, when you look at it in one lifetime, my lifetime, and I'm two-thirds done my life now at 59, but, you know, in one lifetime, a place that was widely considered to be the best place in the world to move. That was Canada in the 80s and the 90s and the 70s. Like it was, man, if you could get into Canada, that was heaven. I mean, if you were coming from a second or a third world country. And, you know, the whole thing worked. It worked. It was a brilliant immigration project. Canada has always been an immigration project. And I really loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved that so many cultures live together. I loved that a city I spent a quarter century in, 25 years in, Toronto, had more languages spoken in it than any other city in the world. That you could get the weirdest and most authentic food from any culture. You just dream it up off the top of your head, look it up on your phone, and you're there in 20 minutes. I kind of loved it. I kind of like looked at these cultures as maybe even superior and an attempt to create a metaculture. And that was, I think, the beginning of my error. Maybe this metaculture isn't possible. But it's only possible if the cultural ribbons can be tied together, if the mythologies can be deliteralized and we can speak plainly to each other. That's the only way it works. But these countries, and they basically represent the Five Eyes, the US being the only exception in the quintet now to the tenor and mood of these countries, which is surrender and acquiescence, as though we lost something, that some final card got flopped at a poker table somewhere and we lost and nobody told us. That's what it feels like a liquidation sale, liquidating the country. Can you imagine second mortgaging people? They're literally saying to they're saying to Gen Z, you will never own a home. If you thought just getting the down payment and manage salaries that could manage the mortgage payment was difficult, how are you going to do it now that we're going to charge you capital gains tax after you've owned the house 15 years? It's just another profound demoralization at the end of the day. Now, I don't know who needed to hear these things today. I don't even know why I said them. They were just there and I spoke them aloud. I suppose what I'm saying is, however absurd you might find what Trump and his team are doing right now, and aspects of it I find absurd too. But given that it's tied to the sacred riddle of the most absurd thing that Gentiles have been living with for generations, the Jews, why wouldn't it be absurd? Of course it's going to be absurd, but we don't know what it is. We don't know what it is. But at the end of the day, as absurd as you find that, you can always just say, well, it could be worse. It could be Canada. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Telemanker Review.